My name is Nora Halstead. I'm 31, and the morning my life turned inside out, I was elbow deep in a dumpster behind a foreclosed mini mansion, assessing a busted chair leg like it was a museum relic. A woman in a razor-sharp suit stepped into the alley as if the stench had signed a non-disclosure. "Excuse me," she said, voice crisp. "Are you Nora Halstead?" I glanced at my hands, black with grime, and thought of my ex's parting shot from 3 months ago. No one wants a broke, homeless woman, Nora. I climbed out, wiped my palms on my ruined jeans, and lifted the chair leg in a half shrug. That's me. "If you're here to repossess anything, you're looking at my net worth." She didn't flinch. "I'm Elena Park, attorney for the estate of Lionel Halstead." Everything inside me went still. Uncle Lionel, the man who raised me after my parents died. The man who taught me to read blueprints the way other kids read comics. The man who stopped speaking to me when I picked a husband over a career 10 years ago, Mr. Halstead passed 6 weeks ago, Elena continued gently. You are his sole beneficiary. I laughed, one hard breath that tasted like rust. There's a mistake. No, she said, opening a leather folder. He left you his Manhattan residence, his vehicles, the investment properties, and the controlling interest in Halstead Studio, valued at approximately $47 million, total estate, just over $50 million. The numbers didn't fit in my head. Yesterday I'd haggled over a wobbly end table. Today this woman was handing me a different planet. There is one condition, Elena added. Of course there was. You must assume the role of CEO of Halstead Studio within 30 days and remain for 1 year. If you refuse or fail, the estate transfers to the American Institute of Architects. I stared at her. I haven't worked a single paid day as an architect. I graduated at 20, married at 21. My ex thought my degree was a cute hobby and made sure it stayed that way. Mr. Halstead never removed you from his will, Elena said softly. He always intended you to inherit, and to come home to the work. A black Mercedes idled at the curb. She gestured. Let's discuss somewhere less aromatic. I'm not exactly Mercedes ready, I said, eyeing the grease on my knuckles. You're the named head of a $50 million estate, Ms. Halstead, she replied. The leather will survive. 3 months earlier, I'd still had furniture, a mortgage. A marriage to Damian Cole, who said things like, I make enough for both of us with the tone of a man issuing a decree. When I uncovered his affair with his secretary, the divorce rolled through like a demolition crew. Damian had a litigation firm on retainer. I had legal aid and optimism. The prenup, ironclad. He got the house, the cars, the savings. I got a suitcase, a storage unit, and the sentence he left me with, damaged goods, so I survived by salvaging. I fished for forgotten pieces, restored them in a rented unit with a single clamp light, and sold them online. It wasn't pretty, but it was mine. Elena handed me the folder as we drove. Inside, the brownstone from the magazines, Lionel's crown jewel, 5 stories of Victorian bones stitched with modern lungs. Solar roof tiles masquerading as slate, smart glass, a garden that looked designed by someone who listened to plants. My chest ached. He disowned me, I murmured. 10 years ago. He was stubborn, Elena said, and proud, and he kept a door unlocked. She deposited me at a boutique hotel with a view of a city I didn't belong to. Pack everything, she said. We fly to New York at 8, board meeting at 2. You have 29 days to decide, but the board assumes you'll decline. Why? Because you've never been allowed to practice, she said calmly. They underestimate you. Good, I thought. Underestimation is a disguise. The room was nicer than anywhere I'd slept in months. In the bathroom mirror, I looked like a version of myself rendered in charcoal. Hollow cheeks, stubborn eyes, hair begging for scissors. I ordered room service like it was an apology to my body and opened my storage of notebooks, 17 of them, each filled across 10 years of stolen hours. Early pages were Lionel's shadow. Later, my own voice emerged, sustainable systems woven into classical proportions. Rain gardens where others paved, passive solar in facades that still honored street rhythm, beautiful ideas with nowhere to live. My phone buzzed. Elena, car at 7:30. Bring everything. You won't be coming back. Everything fit into one duffel and a banker's box of notebooks. That fact was both humiliating and liberating. I slept and dreamed in elevations. At dawn, I was ready in a thrift store blazer that somehow looked like resolve. Elena passed me a coffee, and we watched clouds stitch themselves under the jet's wing. First stop is the Halstead brownstone, she said. Then the studio's midtown offices. Is there a script for hello? I'm your new boss who's never signed a pay app? Honesty, she said, and vision. We drove from the airport through a city that felt like muscle, tough, bright, unembarrassed by itself. The car turned onto a tree-lined block. Lionel's brownstone rose like a memory I wasn't sure I'd earned. The facade kept its Victorian grammar, but the detailing whispered future, discreet sensor seams glazing with a faint iridescence in morning light. Welcome home, Elena said. The door opened before we rang. A woman in her late 50s stood there, eyes shining. Ms. Halstead, I'm Mrs. Larkin. I kept house for Mr. Lionel for 30 years. She hesitated, smile trembling. I made you hot chocolate the day you moved in at 15. You cried into it and apologized for the marshmallows. I remembered the warmth of the mug, the ache in my ribs from holding grief too tight. Mrs. Larkin, I said and hugged her. Inside was a love letter to rooms, original crown molding marrying clean lines, light moving like a living thing. On the 4th floor, Lionel's suite kept the scent of cedar and cologne. On the 5th, he had this converted 8 years ago, Mrs. Larkin said, opening a door. I stepped into a studio with wall-to-wall north light, drafting tables, a powerful workstation, plan drawers humming with potential. Above a corkboard, pinned like a prayer, was my undergraduate exhibition sketch, the one that won first place, the one Lionel had framed in his office before we stopped speaking. The 8th year, I repeated. But we weren't. She nodded. He said talent can go quiet, but it doesn't die. Elena reappeared in the doorway. Bored in 1 hour, Mrs. Larkin arranged wardrobe. In the bedroom, a closet of sharp suits waited, tags still on. I picked a navy that fitted like a promise and tied my hair back. In the mirror, I saw someone I had almost buried, the woman who once believed buildings could heal a city block. Downstairs, a man in his mid-30s waited with Elena. Tall, streak of gray at the temple, measured gaze. Ms. Halstead, he said, extending a hand. Caleb Ross, senior partner. I worked with Lionel for 12 years. The Caleb Ross who reskinned the Seattle Public Library expansion with biophilic shading strategies everyone swore wouldn't pencil? I asked. His eyebrows rose. You know my work. I know a lot of work. I wasn't allowed to practice. I never stopped studying. Something almost like relief softened his shoulders. Then forgive me. This will be less awkward than the board expects. They'll test you immediately. Let them, I said. I've been examined by worse men than a board. Halstead's studio occupied 3 floors of clean white confidence. Heads turned as we crossed open work areas strewn with models and monitors. The conference room door was a slab of frosted glass. Behind it, 8 people sat in a formation that read more tribunal than welcome. Elena handled introductions. This is Ms. NORA Halstead, Mr. Lionel Halstead's designated successor and incoming CEO. A man in his 50s, slick hair, cufflinks that tried too hard, leaned back. With respect, Ms. Halstead has never signed a contract, never stamped a drawing. Mr. Halstead's judgment at the end was sentimental. Mr. Carver, I said evenly, recognizing him from trade profiles. My uncle didn't choose me out of sentiment. He chose me because this firm needs the thing that built it in the first place, courage. I set a slim notebook on the table and opened to a mixed-use concept I'd sketched 2 years earlier on a night Damien missed a flight on purpose to ruin my deadline. Passive solar facades tuned by street orientation, rain gardens handling 80% of stormwater on site, modular units adapting to family growth. I have 16 more notebooks at home. 10 years of work you'll never find in a portfolio because I wasn't permitted to have one. Carver didn't blink, but others leaned forward. A woman at mid-table spoke. Design is one thing, running the studio is another. Agreed, I said. Which is why I'll lean on the people who've already proven they can, particularly Mr. Ross. I'm not here to cosplay as a genius. I'm here to lead, learn fast, and push us past elegant repeats. If you prefer comfortable mediocrity, this will be a painful year. Elena slid a stack of clean agreements onto the table. Those committed to the new direction, sign. Those who aren't, severance packages are ready. A murmur ran the length of the glass. Carver's mouth tightened. When the meeting broke, Caleb fell into step beside me. That was surgical, he said quietly. You just earned half the room and declared war on the other half. Did I earn you? He smiled, brief and real. Lionel told me a year ago that if this day came, I'd know within 5 minutes whether his choice was grief or genius. I know. Good, I said, though my hands were buzzing, because I'm done asking permission to exist. He gestured to a door. Come see Lionel's office. The room held the past like tactful light. His 1970s drafting table, the leather chair that still smelled faintly of him, models of the museum and the hotel that made his legend. In the cabinet, neatly labeled folders, one with my name. I didn't open it yet. Outside the window, the city layered itself in glass and brick and possibility. I pressed my palm to the cool pane and felt, for the first time in years, the clean outline of a life that was mine. Ready for the deluge? Caleb asked. Born in it, I said, and turned back to work. The next morning, I woke up before the alarm. Sunlight filtered through the tall arched windows of the brownstone, washing the room in gold. For the first time in years, I wasn't waking up to someone else's schedule, someone else's demands. Mrs. Larkin had left a tray on the dresser, coffee, fresh croissants, and a note in neat handwriting. Your uncle always started his mornings sketching in silence. Thought you might like to do the same. I smiled faintly. Uncle Lionel's habit still echoed through the walls. I found a clean sketch pad on the drafting table upstairs and opened it to a blank page. My hand hovered over the paper, unsure. For years, I'd buried this instinct, the urge to draw what I felt instead of what I was told to be. And then, quietly, I started to draw. Not a building, but a beginning. Arches merging into trees. Beams shaped like rib cages protecting glass hearts. A structure that looked like it could breathe. I didn't realize how long I'd been sketching until I heard footsteps behind me. Beautiful, said a voice. I turned to find Caleb Ross leaning in the doorway, holding 2 coffee cups. You're up early, I said. I don't sleep much. Comes with the job. Thought you might want the real coffee. The machine here makes something that tastes like hot sadness. He handed me the cup. We've got a full day. The board's still buzzing about yesterday. Buzzing or sharpening knives? He smirked. Bit of both. Carver's furious. He's been lobbying to take control since Lionel got sick. He's not used to anyone standing up to him, especially not a woman with no real experience. Then he's in for a long year, I said, sipping my coffee. I don't scare easily anymore. Caleb studied me for a moment, then nodded slowly. Good. Because if you plan to survive here, you'll need more than talent. You'll need strategy. Then teach me, I said simply. By 9 a.m. And we were in the sleek, glass-walled offices of Halstead Studio. The staff tried to hide their curiosity, but whispers followed me everywhere. That's her, the niece, the one from nowhere. Caleb gave me a quick tour. Design departments, model fabrication lab, client presentation rooms. The place pulsed with quiet intensity, sketches on walls like veins feeding a massive creative organism. I couldn't help but admire it. This was the empire my uncle had built, and now it was mine to protect or destroy. When we entered my office, I stopped short. The desk was massive, curved mahogany. The view stretched across the skyline, the Empire State Building cutting the horizon like a blade. On the wall behind the desk hung a framed quote in Lionel's handwriting. Perfection is sterile. Build what breathes. I ran my fingers along the words. Caleb watched. He said that during our first project together. We were designing a hospital in Tokyo, and he tore up our blueprints halfway through construction because he said it felt dead. Everyone thought he was crazy. Then the redesign won him the Pritzker. That sounds like him, I said softly. Which means, Caleb added, the board will expect you to live up to that madness. Before I could reply, the intercom buzzed. Ms. Halstead, Mr. Carver would like a word. I exchanged a glance with Caleb. And here we go. Carver was waiting in the small meeting lounge, leaning against the glass table like it owed him rent. Ms. Halstead, he said smoothly, I've reviewed your first memo. Rejecting the new policy so publicly was unorthodox. Transparent leadership isn't unorthodox, I said. It's effective. He gave a dry chuckle. You're new here. You don't understand how fragile client relationships can be. When Mr. Halstead ran things, he had experience, vision. You have enthusiasm. I leaned forward. What I have, Mr. Carver, is controlling interest, and a very short tolerance for people who confuse tradition with stagnation. Caleb's lips twitched, just barely hiding a smile. Carver's jaw flexed. You may hold the title, but make no mistake. This firm runs on experience. You'll find that vision alone doesn't keep contracts alive. I met his stare evenly. Then it's a good thing I intend to bring in new ones. I stood, ending the meeting before he could respond. My pulse was steady. For once, I wasn't shaking. When we were back in my office, Caleb let out a low whistle. That was impressive. You just told a man who's been here 20 years to sit down without saying a word. I sank into my chair. He's a bully. I've met his type before. Caleb tilted his head. Your ex? I hesitated, then nodded. He built his control slowly. Every decision I made became his to approve. What to wear, who to see, whether I could even work. Eventually, I didn't need his permission because I stopped asking. That's how control works. It convinces you to volunteer. Caleb's eyes softened. Then I'd say he made a mistake letting you out. The next few weeks were a blur of 12-hour days and late-night research. I devoured project files, learning every detail of the firm's portfolio. I shadowed design teams, asked questions, challenged outdated methods. Word spread quickly that I wasn't just a figurehead. One afternoon, I found something strange while reviewing archived projects. A series of incomplete drafts labeled Project Arcadia. The blueprints were beautiful but unfinished. The notes in the margins were unmistakably Lionel's handwriting, dated just months before his death. When Caleb saw my expression, he said quietly, You found it. What is it? Your uncle's final project, he said. He kept it secret. Only the board knew it existed. It was meant to be his legacy, but he fell ill before he could finish. I traced the lines on the page. The design was breathtaking. A coastal research center shaped like a seashell, designed to self-sustain on solar and tidal energy. This could change everything, I whispered. It could, Caleb agreed. If you can finish it. I looked up sharply. You want me to finish his project? No, he said. He wanted you to. That night I couldn't sleep. I went to the 5th floor studio and spread the Arcadia plans across the drafting table. The city lights shimmered through the glass, reflections bending over Lionel's designs. I read his notes in silence. Every scribble felt like a conversation with a ghost. He'd been designing this for the next generation, and somehow he'd known I'd need it. Halfway through the notes, I found a small envelope tucked between pages. My name was written on it in his familiar handwriting. My hands shook as I opened it. Nora, if you're reading this, it means I've gone where I can't argue with you anymore. You chose love once and paid for it. But the mistake wasn't love, it was forgetting your own worth. Arcadia is my last gift to you. It isn't just a building. It's a reminder that you can rebuild anything, even yourself. Finish it. LH. Tears blurred the ink before I could stop them. I stayed up until dawn, reworking the structure in my own voice. By sunrise, I had something new. Something that carried both his vision and mine. A design that didn't just live, it breathed. When Caleb walked in at 8 a.m., he stopped short, eyes sweeping over the sketches covering the tables. You didn't sleep, he said. No, I admitted, smiling faintly. I worked. He looked at the new blueprints, silent for a long moment. Lionel would have been proud. I'm not doing it for him, I said quietly. I'm doing it for me. Caleb nodded once. Then let's build it. The following weeks moved like thunder. Every hour was soaked in plans, arguments, and sleepless ambition. Halstead Studio buzzed again, not with gossip this time, but with energy. Something electric had returned to those halls. We turned Lionel's unfinished Project Arcadia into our mission. A design that would not only honor his legacy, but also redefine the firm's future. The sketches evolved into digital renders. Prototypes filled the fabrication room. Engineers called it madness. A seashell research center powered by waves? Impossible. But I heard my uncle's voice in my head. Build what breathes. Caleb became my shadow through the chaos, always there when I needed grounding. He had a quiet strength, the kind that didn't need to announce itself. One evening, as we stood over a glowing 3D model of Arcadia, he said, You've changed this place. Or reminded it what it used to be, I said. He smiled. Maybe both. But not everyone shared that sentiment. Carver's opposition came slow, like rot. Subtle emails questioning my leadership. Anonymous leaks about my lack of credentials. He even arranged a casual lunch with a major client, one I wasn't invited to, trying to pitch his own direction for Arcadia. When I found out, I didn't confront him immediately. I waited. I gathered emails, meeting notes, and testimonies. Let him weave his noose tighter. The breaking point came during a quarterly meeting. The entire board sat around the table, tension crackling like static. Arcadia, Carver began smoothly, is ambitious but unstable. We risk bankrupting the firm chasing a fantasy. I stayed silent, watching him with calm, cold patience. He continued, Given Ms. Halstead's limited experience, I suggest we postpone all development until further review. I leaned forward. Mr. Carver, that's quite an accusation. It's not an accusation, he replied. It's prudence. You're running this company on emotion, not expertise. You're not your uncle, Ms. Halstead. He was a visionary. You're a liability. The room froze. Even Caleb stiffened beside me. I smiled. You're right, Mr. Carver. I'm not my uncle. Then I reached into my bag and pulled out a stack of documents. But I am your boss. And unlike my uncle, I don't tolerate disloyalty. I slid the papers across the table. These are copies of the proposals you sent to Archicorp Design under your personal email, offering to sell proprietary plans for Arcadia in exchange for a partnership. The color drained from his face. That's ridiculous. Don't bother, I said quietly. They forwarded your messages to our legal team this morning. Gasps rippled around the room. I rose to my feet, every word deliberate. I may not have run this firm for decades, but I've spent my entire adult life surviving men who thought power meant control. You're just another one. So here's how this works. You'll resign effective immediately, or I'll press charges for corporate sabotage and breach of confidentiality. Carver's chair scraped the floor as he stood, face burning with humiliation. You'll regret this. No, I said. You will. He left, slamming the glass door behind him. The silence afterward was deafening. Then slowly, Caleb began to clap. Others followed. That night, as the office lights dimmed, I stood at the window overlooking the city, the same skyline I used to dream about when I had nothing but a cracked laptop and a pile of sketches. It was finally mine. 2 months later, the Arcadia project broke ground off the coast of Maine. The media called it the resurrection of Halstead Studio. The mayor called it a gamble. I called it justice. I spent the next year rebuilding both the firm and myself. Every blueprint, every negotiation, every foundation poured into the sea felt like reclaiming a piece of who I'd lost. But just as everything stabilized, my past tried to claw its way back. One afternoon, my assistant came in looking uneasy. Ms. Halstead, there's a man in the lobby, says his name is Damien Cole. I felt the air leave my chest. Tell him I'm busy. She hesitated. He said he just wants 5 minutes. Then he can buy them, I said flatly. My time isn't free anymore. But curiosity, that dangerous ember, burned anyway. Against my better judgment, I told her to let him in. Damien entered like a ghost who'd been starved of attention. He looked older, thinner. The charm he once weaponized was gone, replaced by desperation. Nora, he said softly, you look incredible. Flattery expired with the marriage certificate, I said. What do you want? He sighed, running a hand through his hair. I made mistakes, big ones. I was angry, selfish. I shouldn't have left things the way I did. Left things? I laughed once. You left me with nothing. His eyes darted around the sleek office. You've done well for yourself. You're rich, successful. Maybe we can talk. Reconnect. Reconnect? I repeated, leaning forward. Do you even hear yourself? I'm just saying we were good once. No, I said quietly. I was good. You were controlling. I built you a kingdom and you burned it down because my ambition threatened your ego. He flinched. You know what the difference between us is, Damien? I said, voice cold. When you lost everything, you came crawling back. When I lost everything, I built something better. He stared at me for a long moment before standing. You've changed. I grew up, I said simply, and I suggest you do the same. He left without another word. And for the first time in years, the door closed behind him, quietly. When Arcadia opened 8 months later, the world took notice. The structure glowed like a living creature rising from the sea. Glass, steel, and motion harmonized. It generated its own power, filtered its own water, and pulsed with life. The ribbon-cutting ceremony drew press from around the globe. I stood before the crowd, wind whipping my hair, and thought of Lionel. I could almost hear him chuckling beside me. Caleb joined me on stage, smiling proudly. You did it. We did it, I corrected. He hesitated, then said quietly, He'd be proud of you, Nora. I looked at the horizon where the building met the water. Maybe. But for once, I'm proud of me. The applause rose like waves. Later that night, after the cameras were gone and the champagne bottles lay empty, I stood alone on the observation deck of Arcadia. The sea whispered below, My ref,